Are you passionate about fire safety? If you are, join us for the rebranded Canadian Fire Safety Conference and Expo hosted by the Canadian Fire Safety Association. Save the date, April 2nd and 3rd at the Venue Event Centre in Vaughan, Ontario. Experience 2 action-packed days featuring a comprehensive trade show and insightful fire protection educational seminars led by industry experts. Connect with professionals, discover the latest innovations, and enhance your knowledge in fire safety. If you're in fire protection, property management, plans or permit review, or just a fire nerd like myself, we've got something for you. Don't miss out on this essential industry event. Register at CanadianFireSafety.com and be part of the future in fire safety.
Like and subscribe.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning into this episode of the Fire Sprinkler Podcast. I have Ryan Fogelman on from Fire Rover. There's been a lot of videos that are going around social media of essentially, they seem like they're an automatic detection nozzle, but I've recently learned that that's not the case. So we're going to learn a little bit about those things and find out exactly how they work. Ryan, how's it going today?
Oh, I'm doing well. I'm doing very well, Chris. How are you?
Oh, awesome. Essentially, as always is the case with the podcast, we got talking before hitting record, and the amount of information that just got thrown at me was amazing. So super pumped up to learn and relearn all the stuff you just threw at me. There was a lot of information that you threw at me really quick.
Yeah, there is a lot of information.
Awesome. So first of all, tell me a little bit of who you are and your involvement with Fire Rover.
So who am I? All right, that's actually like, if we, not to get like too deep or anything, but I am a serial entrepreneur, right? And when I say that, like, I started cutting my teeth selling shoes for 8% commission in a place called Mr. Allen's. Did you ever go to Mr. Allen's? You were in Ontario. Yeah, we have Adidas, Fila, Nike, 29.8, 2 for 50,
29, 2 for 50.
Yeah,
Listen, I got the Detroit commercials on the TV, man. Absolutely.
Amen. So I started doing that. Like, I did it from the time I was 16 till actually they opened 2 in Cleveland. So I went to law school in Cleveland, and then I actually like worked, Mr. Allen's. I made commission. It was freaking how I cut my teeth and how I learned how to be a sales guy, right?
That's awesome.
So, anyways, long story short, what I realized in sales is that, like, the reality is 2 things. One, I loved working with inventors, but inventors weren't entrepreneurs, right? Entrepreneurs take an idea and run with it. Inventors should create the idea and get a patent and usually stop, right? So I saw so many failures just working in supply chain and my other industries that, in 2015, so I had a digital marketing company that I was always the outsourced VP of business development, and my job was to do promotion to drive leads in, right? So get eyeballs, drive awareness. And so I've always been a little bit of not attention grabber, but just I try to create attention, whether it's for me or for, the industries or for companies or whatever we're working on. In 2016, started Cohatch, and I went to work with one of my partners at Fire Rover, who was one of my good friends. He had been working with 3 guys in the back of a scrap metal facility in downtown Detroit, across from the original Buddies. So we'd go down there, and like, he had been doing security for scrap metal facilities. And what was happening is, like, Detroit, right? I mean, if someone's trying to steal stuff out of your, it was literally a game of cat and mouse, right? So, Brad and Pete and Jeremy, they created this scrap, like, specialized solution that they started using thermal cameras to stop people from stealing, right? So you could see when a body was coming over and they would try to steal copper wire or any of that stuff. Yep. So anyways, they built that up, and they started seeing all these fires in scrap metal facilities, and they were like, Brad said as a joke once, "What should we do? Like, is there anything like, I wish there was something I could do." And the guy's like, "Put the fire on next time." And so Brad grabbed Pete. He was working at a scrap metal facility, grabbed Jeremy, who had already built all this stuff, and and Fire Rover was born. So I was the first employee, myself, and, even now, I mean, we literally, we have 2 salespeople. It's myself and Lindsay Shark.
Really? So two of you guys. Now, I'm seeing it on, like I said, on social media all the time, because it is a pretty awesome looking product. The video's going in the background right now. If you're listening on iTunes or Spotify, you're probably not seeing it, but it's the big nozzle, the big smoothbore nozzle that's automatically seems like it's tracking and attacking. But that's actually not how it works. It's not an automatic detection. It's manual intervention, correct?
100%. So what we look at, and like the FM's classified us as the first smart monitor. So in the beginning, when we first started, we created this, and again, we have a patent on this. So the idea is that we are using a series of tools to do early detection. And again, we do detection earlier than an automated system. Now, in theory, apples to apples, if nothing's moving, everything's the same, an automated system's better. But when you're in an active location where people are moving around, you have a forklift moving, you have things moving, all these different things, like any industrial facility that we have or any outdoor large operation that we have, right? That's where the automated gets confused, right? And so what ends up happening is that they have to basically limit the amount of false alarms. So what do? They have to dumb it down. What does that mean in our industry, right? It means put the heat temperature higher, put the heat temperature higher, put the heat temperature higher. Well,
Right.
for us, we look at every single piece of hay in a haystack to find the needles. So we're catching it earlier. And then when we catch it, we don't just like say heat spray. And like I've seen too many, and you said you've seen all of our videos, right? Because
Yeah.
we're literally putting out a fire a day every day on like now. So like we put out more fires than anyone else in the world, right? Like I can almost, I mean, tell me that's not the case. I'd be in shock, but I'd love to be proven wrong, you know?
Yeah,
Sorry,
well, I
you're
mean, I
saying
don't know
something?
if you would. Like, do you want to be the guy that finds out that there's somebody out there putting more than one fire out a day?
Well, no, some way of how are they doing it?
Yeah, yeah.
You're right. That's a complete.
I don't wanna
What
meet
I'm
that
saying
guy.
is that I always hear that like, you know, oh yeah, we fixed all the bugs, and then you find out that the only time the automated system, they're hitting the back of loader operators, they're following people out the door, and like I'm not trying to scare anybody, but the reality is that we have never once falsely sprayed, not one time, because we look at it, we have a human involved, they look, they verify, then they react. And so
Right.
we have a minute 20 to start shooting, like from catching it to finding it. We have a minute 20. Now, again, we catch it in 3 seconds, 6 seconds, 7 seconds,
Sure.
but you still have to charge the unit. I got to bring water to the nozzle. And then it's always another process. I got to call the fire department or the fire professionals or the fire brigade. So, I mean, we're doing this now, 3 continents, 750 sites. And like what makes us unique is that we're service. So, like, we do the full maintenance, full monitoring, bumper to bumper warranty for the life of the contract. So, I always say like we're like your fire bodyguard, right? Or maybe we're, you know, like it's not to say that we can be overpowered, you know, just like the president has Secret Service, you know, that like protect them. But you know, it doesn't mean that no one's ever going to have a fire again or a catastrophic fire, but
Right.
we definitely mitigate the risk.
So, I mean, in my head, I'm picturing a bunch of people sitting in like a big control room with monitors up on the screen. But what is the actual process for, like, is somebody sitting there in front of two monitors, kind of like I am right here, one there, one there. One's got just a bunch of little mini screens, and then one has like a thermal that's just like we might have an issue on this one, or how does it actually physically
So
send that information?
so you know, I always say like we have AI, right? So we take those symptoms, whether we're getting in a thermal alarm, a optical alarm, or a, you know, smoke for steam analytics, or something is saying, hey, that might be, you know, an incident, let's look at it. Then we look at it. So all of our agents are seeing, and we have two facilities, we have backup facilities, they're UL certified, they're 5 diamond. I mean, so it's not, I mean, you know, these have all the certifications and everything that you would want. And you know, but basically all those exceptions pop up, they look at it, they react, right? And so we have communication protocols per customer. So I mean, it is definitely harder than it seems, but it's not as hard as, like, you know, we don't have someone who's watching every camera all the time.
Sure.
Not that,
Yeah.
that you were saying that, but I mean, the reality is that it's a lot of exception reporting. And, you know, if there's a, well, we just don't know, then it goes to a person, and that's good, right? Like it's basically you're bringing an umpire into it.
Yep. So essentially, you get the controller or the operator gets an alert. This is potentially a fire. He visually takes over the cameras, investigates, and then determines, yeah, let's start spilling water.
Well, yeah, and then I mean, he's also looking at and talking to the employees who are on site. We have a series of lights and alarms, and we have, like, you know, button. I mean, there's a number of different things that you can do to trigger the alarms to start. And then this is another thing, right, where there is no prescriptive correct way to respond to a fire incident, because there's no fire incident that is the same ever, right? I mean, even if there's no two same materials, and there's no two same fire incidences ever, right? I mean, like that's the not the so you have to have someone thinking through the process. And like, if we have two nozzles, we have two folks that are fighting from those two vantage points, right? And if, we can have up to five working, and like, so there's it's really learning how to fight a fire. You had said it before, you're a volunteer firefighter, and like, firefighters love us because, like, I don't put you in a situation where you have to go into this building, right? If you go in, it was kind of that video I showed you. It's, we know exactly where the heat is. So when you can pull your nozzles up next to us and give us double spray and mimic what we're doing, it like literally always helps. But, because if we're getting close on a fire, I mean, as like sometimes you get that little extra, like, that extra push from a, like a firefighter's nozzle, like saves the day, right? So really, I mean,
yeah, we'll take all the credit.
Well, yeah,
you put it out up first.
well, and that's where, but you guys are understaffed, right? You're under like trained. I mean, and that's like, again, I'm not saying everybody, but there's 1.2 million firefighters in the U.S. and Canada. 700,000 are volunteers, right? So, and God love you guys, right? But I don't want you going in and fighting a fire in a scrap metal facility. Like, there's no reason that even like professional firefighters that understand industrial fires should go in if I can choose them not to. But I sure as hell don't want to put you into it, right? Like,
how do you train for a commodity that changes every day?
100%, and that's the question. How do you? And it's practice. I mean, we're on the front lines every day.
Going into a house, you generally speaking understand the room and contents of a house. Going into a commercial building, you generally understand what's in that. But a recycling facility, like, you're assuming and hoping that the different commodities within the thing are separated properly, which I'm pretty confident is never the case, or else you wouldn't have a battery popping off in the middle of a pile of plastics.
100%. And I mean, think about like on the scrap metal side. And again, they don't like to be called scrap anymore, so it's more on the metal side. But like, you have these battery problems that the batteries are actually getting through their systems, because a lot of these huge shredders, they're not made to catch this little like button battery that could cause an issue. So you would think that you'd be able to like take your earbuds, or like go into a car if it's been in a car accident and it's going to get scrapped, that you can go in and that they can go and look and take out all the things that might cause a problem later. But then you hear and you understand the industry, and basically like they can't send their guys in to clean these cars out, because some of these they can get stuck with like drugs and stuff, and like so they get pricked, and so they have to leave these closed. So then now you have a bike that's in the back of a car, right? Like, or a bike battery that's in the back of a car that could have just been grabbed and thrown and dealt with by law. You know what I mean? Like, it gets crushed and now it's there, right? So it's the same thing with vapes. I mean, there is nowhere in the United States for someone who has a vape to get rid of it, right? Because it's a biohazard and hazard material. So literally every single person, there's 1.2 billion of these that start like now. And I know that for a fact, right? Because that's all through. But like, you look at it, there's 1.2 billion vapes that are like, there's nowhere to throw them, right? You have to throw them in the trash because there's nowhere to drop them off, because even places like Lowe's, Home Depot, and Staples, they don't accept.
Right. And I mean, vapes are, I'm not a smoker, but I know a lot of people that used to smoke transition to the vapes, and there's batteries in them, and like you say, a biohazard as well.
Yeah, it's because of the juice, it's considered a hazard material, and because of it being in your mouth, it's a biohazard. So it's literally like there's two reasons why it's like it's illegal for anyone to accept these in the United States. And then we wonder, like, they're having an issue. And I learned about this because, I look over at the UK all the time, and that's where I've learned a lot of good things, right? And like, they have a problem because they're like, yeah, we're only collecting 70% of our vapes. And they show me this like vape thing, and I see a picture of it. And I'm like, oh, 17%. I wonder how much we do. And then I'm like, oh my God, like we have nowhere to go. And like, I teach people on TikTok. So we have a Fire Rover TikTok page, right? I teach kids, how to properly recycle. I teach kids what not to put in. But, I've gone to Lowe's and Home Depot, and I dropped off, I can't even tell you how many like like toothbrushes that you're not allowed to do, but I didn't realize. You go to Staples and they give you an itemized receipt and tell you every single thing. So I gave them my toothbrush, like, we don't accept that. And I was like, why not? And they're like, oh, well, it's your biohazard. I was like, oh, I mean, I guess I understand, but what do we do? Right. And there's no solution and no one's, coming up with one. So now, our waste and recycling operators are victims, right? I mean, they have 1.2 billion vapes that are being thrown in their lap every year and growing. Yeah, it's literally it's insane.
Yeah, and that's if they do go to the recycling facility and not just the landfill, which is
and
one or the other, right?
well, and the landfills, I mean, we do have a solution for catching landfill fires. We have a on watch solution, and like we also just created a robot that, like, we call it a robot. It sits on a Cushman that does like hot work. So like we're trying to create from like so I built it for a paper recycling's like a company, a large paper recycler. But basically the idea is that as you're doing your hot work, will you basically do active mode, and then it puts a box around you. Anything outside of the box, like, will trigger one of our agents to look at it, and then we're able to spray, and we're able to sit there for 24 hours after, or 2 hours, I mean, whatever per code, but we replace that human who's, like, I mean, I know I'm boring, but like, as you just yawned right there, like, it's good.
No, listen, I don't think I yawned. This is wrong guy, man. We'll talk about this all day.
You totally just yawned. Everybody go back, just rewind 10
I'm
seconds.
gonna review the footage. We're talking about it now. I'm gonna yawn, but now.
Oh, for sure. Well, no, but listen, I honestly realize I'm boring. This stuff is boring, and I'm kidding, I think. But the point is that, anyways, it's funny. You're a good dude.
I got you tricked. So the you got a bunch of different units that you guys are selling. The standalone units, how? All right, I got two questions. I'm going to write one down before I forget it. But the standalone unit, is it connected to a municipal water supply? Is it supplied by a fire pump, or are they self-contained units?
So the Fire Rover box is self-contained. It's heated and it's cooled. It's got a 1,000-gallon tank, 30% of a environmentally friendly wetting agent, right? NFPA 18A, or we can use water, or we can use gels. We have systems that like really can shoot out a bunch of different types, and we can. We typically use the same, like, our model is built on Southwest, right? Like, we do all the same, we refurb all the same, we use all the same cameras. So, because I mean, it is a full service, right? So, I mean, we're simplistic in the changes that we make, but I mean, we're always kind of adding things, if that makes sense. So yes, there is no water. Our continuous flow is doing the exact same thing. So when you do the box, all I need is a concrete pad, internet, and electricity, right? So it's a 20 by 8 by 8 container. It can sit outdoors or indoors. It can sit on under equipment on a mezzanine. And then if we put a mast unit on it, it goes up typically 30 feet. And that's what we do a lot of our shredders, like our metal shredders. And then we'll do like up to 40 feet with just a post. So, the one behind me, but we're doing a lot of these where, if you think of a water tower, it literally goes just straight up now. We don't need the box on the bottom, and you can do a fire loop around a yard, right? Like a paper, a storage yard, and then we'll protect all the areas like inside of it. So we would always prefer to have more water, but there's a lot of times where the Fire Rover just comes in as additional protection. Right, it's supplemental, right? So it's a supplemental system that comes in. It doesn't really need permitted, and it doesn't mess with the sprinkler head or the sprinkler flows. When we're doing a continuous flow, it does mess with that. But I mean, there's obviously always been ways for us to figure that out and get the right pressures.
So what is the discharge? What's the GPM that one of these nozzles that are in the video here? Typically, what's the average GPM?
It's like it's 150 PSI, and honestly, I don't even know the GPM offhand. But I mean, we can do for the continuous flow, it's all based on, pressure. So we do different nozzles. We'll do, 2.5-inch nozzle that'll fog spray, smooth bore. I mean, we have a lot of flexibility on those.
Smooth bore or fog nozzle opened up. Yeah. Okay.
Well, and that's where, so we always work with our customers. And this is where we work with a lot of fire sprinkler guys, right? Because you guys will build the system, and really all you're doing is saying, you know what, this area that it has 30-foot ceilings, like smaller amount of equipment or a high fire risk and it's active, I'm going to make this Fire Rover. And even, I mean, it could be one nozzle inside a, 2 million square foot building. It could be, 99 nozzles at a building that it's only the Fire Rover system, right?
Yep.
But the fire sprinkler contractor is still bringing the water in. You're still running the pipes. You're still doing everything that you'd be doing. You just wouldn't be running the heads, which again, like, most folks know that, but I mean, most people, when they think sprinkler, they think of, not the microphone behind your head, but the head.
Yeah, well, and that's why I wanted to talk to you, is to make sure that everybody's getting the right information, right? It's not, again, the thing about sprinklers with the fire department is it's not taking away work from the fire departments. The thing with Fire Rover versus sprinkler contractors, it's not taking work away. There's still installation, there's still piping, there's still fittings, there's things that need to be done that we can work together for.
Well, yeah, and we're almost FM certified too. So like, I mean, the reality is that like, if you look at our like fire protection from an innovation perspective, it's very difficult to bring innovations out in fire because, and again, this is my opinion. I mean, but basically, I mean, like I built like Fire Rover, or we built Fire Rover over the last 10 years. And I mean, it's an overnight success over 10 years, right? Our first 5 years, we had people who really invested in our system. We had a lot of customers that really invested and helped us. And like we would say, like, hey, was that a good event? And like we didn't know, you know what I mean? So like, there were some of my customers that are really good customers. I'm like, oh man, like we figured it out together. The second 5 years we kind of scaled, and we're still scaling right now. But we're almost FM certified, and like that's where the certification comes in.
Yep.
Well, and that's where we were fortunate in waste and recycling. We don't have a lot of regulation, right? So, the reality is we were able to prove it in real life. So that's why, like, we have the experience that we've had. In most of the time, you have to prove it in the lab, right? And that's a problem, right? Because you have to have millions of dollars. You can't be a startup, you can't be a family-owned business, right? I mean, you got to be really well funded and deep pockets, and so then you end up having a lot of that innovation that you normally see has been stifled, from the big guys who are doing it. And again, I'm not saying they're doing it on purpose. I mean, but it becomes a nature of NFPA, the coding, the term, you know what I mean, like the whole kind of rule structure. It just makes it very difficult to innovate.
So is a lot of your installation like for the essentially, because I don't know, this is where you could correct me, there's not a code or a standard that you follow for the design process of the Fire Rover? So is your stuff more alternative solution based, or is it like an insurance kind of driven design basis?
Well, and I mean, you just said it right from the very beginning. I spent a lot of time talking to insurers. I spent a lot of time talking to fire engineers. I love fire engineers. The only problem with fire engineers is that it's almost like having an architect and then building the exact same building a million times. Like if you're not going to do anything different, then so a lot of people don't like the simplicity of the Fire Rover because that causes the ability not to have and again, I think from an innovation standpoint that's helpful. So and again, I know I'm kind of like walking around but so there's always a jurisdictional requirement or a insurance requirement, and between those two, the insurers really drive a lot of the decisions for requiring it. But then I mean, we have about 150 informal or formal variances from the cities who basically look at a fire engineer will write the justification for why it meets or exceeds code, why it meets or exceeds, and when we've had variances, I mean, I just got a C&D a construction and demolition facility in California. I mean, we just got a variance, 2 months ago. So, I mean, we're getting them in the proper jurisdictions. People are respecting our results. And, fortunately, from a reputation perspective, we're doing great. But from a codification, it's just, I'm on the hazard material committee, like for recommended best practices for hazard materials. Like, how it works. It could take 20 years. So like we were written in 409 as hangars, and, but it's not Fire Rover. It's the definition of what we do, except we have the patent on it. You know what I mean? So, that's the type of stuff that we're, always working towards. But, you got to be big and deep pockets. We have 2 salespeople, right? Like, I mean, so who are we fighting with?
Yep. Yeah. And that's again, impressive that you guys are doing the, I'll say, damage that you're doing with only 2 salesmen. So how big is the manufacturing facility? Your manufacturing facility isn't that far away. I've already, before we started recording, invited myself to the facility.
Yeah, love to have you.
So how big of a facility is this? Like, like, you guys have guys that are, 5-6 days a week, 10,
Yeah.
20 guys?
Oh my
assembled
God,
on
we
these
have over
things out?
100 people at the company.
Oh,
I'd say there's the reason. First of all, we've gotten large, and again, I mean, we're a startup company, so again, 10 years later, we're reinvesting in our business,
yeah.
and we're reinvesting in new solutions, like the hot work robot, right? Like, so there's a lot of things that we are doing. I think the reason we've been able to do this with a smaller amount of people is that it's we used LinkedIn, and I've used, I do a lot of articles. I have my annual report that I put out on waste and recycling facility fires. And, I think the US and Canada have the best and most prepared, actually, I know this, waste and recycling industry in the world.
Mhm.
And I would hope that that's due some to the Fire Rover and some to just the awareness that we've brought to the industry. Because I mean, the reality is I've been fighting like lithium ion battery fires on the front line since 2015, right? And like nobody even knew what lithium ion batteries were when I figured it out. And like I didn't even know it. I was trying to tell the world once I figured it out, like, guys, like we have a battery, a wave is coming, like scare and catastrophic loss, and it's like I'm not doing it for any other reason. Like now I'm helping, I do it to help the insurers get comfort in the industry, right?
Yep.
So if you look at like one of our large customers, we have 9 of the top 10 waste and recycling, right? So, for one of my customers, I have over 100 facilities. We do $4.5 billion worth of their property, plant, and equipment. They're self-insured. So they look at the money that they pay us is literally a fraction of what they'd be paying for a policy. So from the insurance side, now that we have the reputation and we have 3 years of data based on FM, like what they've like at least what we've given them to prove what we've done. So now it's not like me just like saying it and you guys like, oh yeah, like, I mean,
Sure.
I put out 1,000 fires, right? I mean, just
Yeah.
so now we at least have some sort of a credibility behind it. And again, we have a lot of customers that are, are fortunately willing to talk to us. But I'm going to tell you, it's not easy. Like it's not all roses and, I mean, so sorry.
We're talking about making
but
a major change in the fire protection industry, which is probably one of the hardest industries. Sprinkler guys, if they didn't do it 20 years ago, they don't want to do it today. Right?
Amen. And I look at them and I'm like, because a lot of people like are asking me like, okay, so hey, what's your plan with waste and recycling? And the reality is that like we're not doing a chemical facility. We're not doing like like we do because of waste and recycling. We do have like so many different like there's hazard materials, there's organics, which is your compost, and then you have your metal recycling, which is a third of the fires. That's your scrap metal and like your pick and pull yards. You have your waste, paper, plastic, which is more of your traditional recycling, and then you have your e-cycling, which is like the wild west of, I mean, you're literally making and recycling batteries, right? And we do like a lot of battery recyclers across the world, and it's dangerous, right? Like you're dealing with things that are new enough. So yeah, 20 years ago you built a sprinkler for something, but now we're dealing with this 20 years of technology that's coming in and it ain't going anywhere. So what are we going to do, right? Like, and it's I have a solution for tip floors and waste and recycling facilities and outdoor. I don't have a solution for, your house when your bike battery, like burns and,
Yeah. Yep.
goes to 3,000 degrees in thermal runaway and there's nothing that'll stop it.
Yeah. There's
It's
nothing.
scary.
Yeah. Yep. What kind of additives and things like that? Can it be combined with like a foam concentrate or any kind of additive into the water? Because it can be a self-contained unit. So do you guys have like a foam, not generator, but like a foam proportioner that can be added to the system?
Yeah. Well, and so that's typically like what you guys would do, right? As like the
Yeah.
sprinkler guys, like
Yep.
you guys would come in and do like so like the one that we use, like we use a bunch of different products, but like you just do like an inductor and inside the continuous flow. Our Fire Rover box, we literally do like gels. We'll do we use encapsulator agents, we'll use foams, our CAF units will do the same thing depending on what the customer wants.
Okay.
I always say that we're agnostic because there's a lot of guys who make claims out there that they can like put out batteries, and like we do put out batteries, but like if I use just plain water, it's the way that we do it, and like how it's really about cooling everything around it and making sure you break the chain, right? It's
Yeah.
not about, it's not about putting that battery fire out.
It's not about
And
putting the
that
battery fire out. It's about stopping it from going to the next cell, right?
100%. And like, so now you have to teach like, AI to go do that, right? And like they have to understand it in real time through smoke and through all these different things. And then, you know what I mean? So it's like, I know it sounds like, I mean, it's really hard, right? Like, I mean, and like,
You got to be a mad
so-
scientist to understand how it is. I've had a
Well,
couple
and that's where-
conversations
yeah.
with people about lithium batteries and stuff like that. I mean, lithium batteries with sprinkler. And it's, the guys that know what they're talking about. I mean, the best way to say it is the guys that really know what they're talking about, nobody else has any idea what they're talking about. And it's
And
like,
so I've been fortunate to like speak at so we've done like the resell, like so that's really a lot of the scientists and the guys and then I also did a battery MBA, which was so that I could understand like, and again, I have a law degree in MBA. I know I'm a smart person, but I'm not smart enough to understand like the technology behind batteries. And like I literally learned it all. I sat in the classes, I listened, but I didn't like take like the physics and the engineering courses, but you have to. But I will tell you this is that like we as the public are demanding that we get more and more power, and we want it in smaller and smaller, more portable ways. And the manufacturers are giving us exactly what we're asking for.
Yep.
It's not a bad thing, but I mean, and at the end of the day, waste and recycling operators getting crushed with it. And there's all these other effects. So it's like we need to do something, whether it's EPR, deposits, stuff like that, to try to help solve it. And the reality is that all of these things that they talk about, sodium ion or whatever, is like the next level to get rid of batteries. Like they're not even like a decade away, right? Like even with the way we move our stuff, like they're like, this is like VHS tapes and like getting the first DVD. Like you still have 10 more years.
Yep.
So it's like, how do you prepare for it and make sure? And a lot of people are focusing on education, and I'm like, okay, I'm good with that. But then where are my drop offs?
that's right. Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
I mean, if you tell me to drop something off, you better make it convenient for me to put it somewhere, because if not, I'm just not listening to you, and I'm throwing in my magic bin. Like it disappears, and now we have an explosion that almost kills this was actually in Columbus. There was an oxygen tank that was thrown into a waste facility, a waste bin. He throws it in his truck, puts it in, crushes it. You see the explosion. It's on my LinkedIn page. Yeah, I mean, I almost got killed, but it's just like we create bombs in our trash.
Yep. But with
So
zero regard to the next person who's got to handle it either. I'll say that,
Huh.
pretty truthfully. Most people just throw stuff in the trash, and it's as soon as that truck's gone, it's dust
Yeah.
there, right?
the magic bin, right? It's
That's
like
right.
David Copperfield, like
That's
you
right.
like.
Yep.
I mean, it's funny because what one of the guys used to tell me that like we inadvertently will create bombs in our trash, right? Like, so you're gonna change your oil, you're gonna work, and like you're gonna paint your fence, and then you're gonna use paint thinner or whatever. You take those rags, you stick them in a 6-ply bag, you close the thing because you don't want it to smell, you don't want the fumes to get out. You put it in your bin. It's 90 degrees outside. Your bin's 120 as the sun's beating on it. You throw it into a truck. All it needs is a spark, right? That's it, and that thing goes up. And that was before batteries. So
That's right.
like,
Put a
I mean,
battery
this
next
is
to it.
where, yeah, it is. It's definitely a crazy time, but
Awesome. Ryan, if somebody wants some more information on the Fire Rover, where do they go?
they go to firerover.com, or they can go to my LinkedIn page. I have a fire safety report newsletter that has 12,000, of my closest friends. So, I'm always talking about kind of these things. And again, listen, like I love these types of conversations. Anytime you want to call me, I'm always available. Once we get FM certification, obviously I would love to, have another conversation, or maybe at NFPA this year.
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
happy to sit down with you, but
Yep.
I appreciate what you're doing. I mean, listen, to be 8 years new in an industry like this, you're literally like, I mean, you're almost retired. So
I'm counting down the days. There's a lot of
Oh.
days in that countdown, but I'm counting down the days. I used to have a vacation, when you'd plan your vacations, and I used to have my retirement date on there, and it got so depressing every day when I'd look it up. My alarm would wake me up, and then I would see that and be like, oh, wow, only 12,000 more days till retirement.
Oh man, I mean, it's funny. I don't think I'll ever retire, but I
No,
mean,
me either.
well, and that's where there's retiring the old school way, right? Where, and then there's retiring like where I'm actually just enjoying my life, but I'm working like a few less hours. And,
Yeah.
I have a feeling that's probably going to be my route, but
So
who knows?
I've only heard of one person in sprinklers. Sprinklers a very, very dedicated trade. Everybody is, they're either in 100% or they're the guys that are just there for the money. And there's only one guy that I've heard of that was a very diehard sprinkler guy. And the phrase I like to heard is he doesn't even look up when he goes into a building anymore, and that's retirement, right? Every sprinkler guy walks in, the first thing they do is look up, right?
Oh, I mean, you have
I heard
to.
one guy checks out to the point he doesn't even look up anymore.
Oh man, I don't. I mean, listen, like old habits die hard.
Yeah.
It's funny. I had a product called Stick Grip that, like, I mean, it got 1 billion views on TikTok, but it's like a product that like you put over like lacrosse sticks or baseball bats, hockey sticks,
Okay.
you Canadian guys, and then you pull it off and it goes. So, but yeah, that one, and I haven't been involved in a couple of years, but like, just like getting behind a booth and selling, is that's where it goes back to Mr. Allen's, right? Like that's where my zen is. You know what I mean? Like, so
I'm gonna have to try to find a clip for that to put at the beginning of that, because I think people that are not from this area, this specific area, that don't know that that commercial that was always on
Mr. Allen's. I mean,
I think it was on UPN, like whatever the local Detroit, like the Detroit area specific TV show. It was, can't remember the name of the channel, but I remember the commercials very, very like distinctly. It was like one of those memories that just clicks, right?
I mean, it did amazing, right? I mean, it was Allen's son. That's what's funny. But yeah, no, that's so funny. But yeah, no, I appreciate it.
That would slide in.
Yeah, it was Allen. He was like, Mr. Adams, Mr. Adams, Mr. Adams. Like, that's all he had to say, dude. It was like, I think it was made off the WJBK or whatever, the Strong Songs, like, I don't know if you remember those days. But anyways, well, listen, I appreciate it. It's always good, seeing a fellow Detroiter. And, listen, I look forward to next time we talk. But, thank you so much for having me as your guest.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on, man. Free ball.
You too. Thanks, Chris. Talk to you soon.
Yep.